Which human culture or practice has shocked you the most? The Ganges River in India. People think the water has healing powers and crap. They drink it and bathe in it and such. It is insanely polluted. Also, if it's so holy, why do the people fill it with garbage, sewage, dead bodies, etc? Blows my mind. In high school I did a project on Somalia and read about the process of female circumcision, aka genital mutilation, and how when it was time to consummate the marriage sometimes they'd need to carve it open with a knife so the man could fit. Makes me feel uneasy just thinking about it. Yes, a Somali girl that shocked me too. My parents are fortunately vehemently against it, and it is fortunately a dying practice. Papua New Guinean tribes people would make young male kids entering puberty suck out the adult's semen out of their penises to absorb their manhood and become men. The more vigorous the kid would suck, the more effective he would become a man. So they told their kids. Absolutely bizarre. This was what I was going to answer too. Absolutely depraved. It's not shocking to me personally, but many find the Agori in India very disturbing. Aga means non-terrible or non-terrifying, which seems antithetical to the appearance some sadhus take naked or wearing very little, smeared with ash from funeral pyres, using skullcaps as bowls and bones as ritual objects, practicing and sometimes living in cremation grounds. Aga philosophy revolves around the inherent divinity of all things. Every living being holds a spark of the divine. Nothing is outside of God. Thus nothing is inherently evil or profane. Even the most taboo things such as dead bodies or reportedly haunted areas. The fast track to removing fear and revulsion of what is seen as bad, wrong, etc. and remove the dual view of the world is to worship God through what is considered impure and unholy liquor, meat, remnants of death. As an interesting aside, the Agori walk the talk and give women respect and spiritual authority, treat all castes equally, and there are Agori-run schools and homes in Varanasi that specifically give low caste and poor children the same education as wealthier kids, helping lift communities out of poverty and confront class discrimination and sexism. TBH, the very idea of a low caste is to me far more shocking, disgusting than a weird religion. I've watched a fair amount of documentaries about honor killings and it disgusts me that people could value their perceived reputation more than their own blood relatives. The fact that they can kill, and usually in very brutal fashion, their own daughters, nieces, sisters, cousins in order to protect their fragile ego and supposed honor is just sickening to me. What makes it even worse is that they are supposedly trying to preserve their honor by committing one of the most dishonorable acts one can commit. Anyone who partakes in such a heinous practice is worse than scum and deserves the harshest possible punishment. Imprisoning rape victims because they were raped, and throwing them in cells, where they were often raped by the policeman. In some cultures, beating your wifesses was a social norm and slave owning. These two I could never wrap my head around why anyone thought these were okay. Cough Saudi cough. I consider it a practice, but in Germany they often don't use spaghetti sauce, instead they use ketchup. I learned firsthand the pain. Frickin' terrifying. During an employee training lecture, I learned that in some Asian cultures, not making eye contact is actually a sign of respect towards superiors. It's the complete opposite in America, so it was kind of cool to learn. I don't know how it is in other Asian cultures, but in Korea, you have to show respect to elders even when drinking. You have to not only pour for your elders, but when you take a shot, you have to turn away from them as you drink. I'd go with the Sambia people making their prepubescent boys suck their dongs as a coming of age ritual, and yes, they are required to swallow. I always thought insemination rituals were bizarre AF. Took a cultural anthropology course in college that briefly touched of different insemination rituals. Usually semen is rubbed on skin or ingested by coming of age boys as a ritual to become men. Some cultures have other bizarre rites of passage. One comes to mind. In the Amazon there's a group that engages in pain rituals with bullet ants. People are weird, worldwide, since prehistory. Mingi killings by mostly isolated tribes in southern Ethiopia. Tribal elders designate newborns for death over trivial things like the order their teeth come in, under the belief not sacrificing these babies will curse their community. There is a really good documentary called Omo Child about an effort to stop the practice and save the kids designated Mingi. Highly recommend watching it. Blaming the following generation. for the sins of their mothers and fathers seems to be an extremely common practice that I just find fricked all the heck up. The insert any generation between the ages 13-35 have ruined this country because of their insert popular thing. I've always thought open casket funerals were very weird. I've been to two. The corpses didn't look much like the people who used to occupy them. Also, maybe I just live in a stupidly expensive city, but cemeteries don't seem like a very efficient use of land. I'll go watch Poltergeist now. Open casket funerals are creepy when you think about it. You are looking at a dead body, and the person looks more like they are sleeping. Spartans sending small boys out to hunt, kill and terrorize slaves. The most skilled boys from military training, which began at age 7, went out into the wilderness armed with a knife as low as age 12. They were expected to sleep during the day and hunt and murder slaves on their farms at night. Declawing cats where the practice is still allowed. It's pitiful to see house cats return home from the vet with their paws bandaged up, trembling with each step, and unable to defend themselves should the need arise. That some parents literally beat their kids if they don't get an A+. If you think your child's grades are more important than their mental and physical health, and you beat them when they are not 100% perfect, you've officially failed as a parent. You cannot change my mind. People calling kids spoiled brats if the kid does not want to share their property, even if the kid asks nicely, even if the kid is a complete stranger. Sometimes the adult physically grabs the property and gives it to the kid who asked. Meanwhile, adults can just not share their property and nobody will force them to share it. My mum did that, then it was my fault if my stuff got stolen or if it was damaged. I wasn't allowed to be upset. It was infuriating. Bride kidnapping, witch burning and medicine murders are still a thing. In general, any kind of extreme mutilation ritual, genital, feet binding, cutting of limbs as punishment, denial of personal freedom or religious persecution. I have a big problem dealing with the contrast of the morality preached in the section of the world I live in and the actions of a big enough chunk of people in places where such things are still okay. I could talk about the big problems that the West also has, like someone said, beauty pageants for kids, and shaming young people. But honestly, that loses its shock value real quick when compared to someone dismembering and eating your baby for their magic healing properties because they were born in albino. Sexualizing minors on television with makeup and small clothing. Why circulate the garbage? Dress a 16-year-old in something appropriate. I feel like TikTok allows a lot of this as well. I'm not shocked by the 16-year-old so much as pageant children. 3-year-olds being waxed and plucked, fake tanned, put in heels and fed caffeine to make them more stage friendly. The fact this is not only legal but socially acceptable is appalling. Worshipping celebrities. Huge cultural practice where I'm from. People know all sorts of random little details of famous people's lives. The frick you, I got mine mentality. The amount of narcissism and self-entitlement needed to actively throw others under the bus to ensure you personally make it through or get what you want is incomprehensible. The frick you, I got mine mentality. It's more than that. There's a pervasive notion among some that I haven't succeeded unless others have failed. They would be perfectly happy burning society to be king of the ashes, even if such a condition were manifestly worse than they are at present. In the rural southern US, over-involvement in your child's life, even after they are of age. If you have an 18-year-old who lives with you, it's seen as normal to chaperone their dates, have control over their money and not let them go outside without parental supervision. And you can't just marry whoever you want, or practice whatever religion you want, or wear what you want, or listen to what you want. It has to be approved by your mom and dad. Your parents will most likely pick out your spouse for you and he must be an upstanding rich Christian man or a good wholesome Christian woman who aspires to be a 1950s housewife. And they will be the same families who vilify arranged marriages in other cultures. The leopardmen of Guyana select a victim and then kill them by stuffing various herbs deep into every one of their orifices. After the family buries the person, the leopardmen come and dig up the corpse and rebury it in a place convenient for them. They leave it to rot a while and then come back with long reeds that they poke into the ground and into the corpse to drink the juice produced by the rotting body. They believe this gives them special powers, like shapeshifting. They usually eventually get really sick and die young. The populace have carved special wood clubs with spikes to kill leopardmen with. ETA. Switch Guinea to Guyana. Sorry for the error. What? Entitlement and lack of empathy. It truly amazes me how many people will put others down for being in different circumstances with zero attempt to understand the other's situation, and just blindly spew hatred and ignorance towards those people. And those same people internally get mad when others treat them poorly. Genital mutilation of girls. In some cultures they cut everything, leaving the child badly scarred and in pain. Sex is horrifically painful. In India, it was a very old practice known as bride burning. If a husband would die, then his bride would be burned alive with him. Don't remember what culture it is, but women from the day they are born have a ring placed around their neck, and I think keep getting one every year so that their necks are eventually stretched. Honestly, genocide. It makes no sense whatsoever. We are just as animalistic as any other animal, so you'd think the top priority would be survival, but our rationality has overpowered our biology. We can find justification for why they deserve it despite the fact that they are the exact same species. I know other animals kill each other, but chimps don't wage entire campaigns to wipe the other chimps across the river off the face of the earth. They skirmish, they steal, they even pillage. Their violence is instrumental and practical, but slaughtering an entire population for no reason other than an irrational belief? That's uniquely human. Genocide makes no sense. All Orthodox Jewish practices. I watched a documentary about it all the other day, and to say I'm shocked is an understatement. Dismissing scientific consensus or scientific knowledge as something fictional, but at the same time you accept YouTube and Facebook as a valid source of information without a doubt. This level of ignorance and stupidity. I was shocked to find out there are people that believe the earth is actually flat, and this is just the shallow start of conspiracy theories. No one will ever understand how much angry I get when people do this. It's just so obvious, yet you can't argue with a stupid person. The treatment of North Korean citizens. I recently read the story of a girl who defected with her mother and sister, and I was horrified by what I read they went through, and how that was considered getting out easy compared to most. Killing children for some small thing. Example, my distant relative in China killed her grandson because he had a cleft lip that got fixed. Domestically, I think the child actor industry is a pretty shocking and usually disturbing one. It's crazy how a bit of money will make parents do fricked up things with their kids, like work them to death. Internationally, when I was traveling in India and I saw the caste system firsthand, I honestly couldn't comprehend it. The stories I heard and things I saw really changed me. NGL. The caste system is indeed but, and the country is still trying to get over it, but the government won't. The education system and government jobs are based on castes. This is extreme favoritism. Circumcision, religious or not, though the practice of it in America is even weirder than, say, being Jewish. We did it as a way to curb masturbating, with no religious context involved. Studies are starting to say it's healthier not to do it. The family is more important than anything else. To keep your mouth shut about a family member's atrocities, to not tarnish the family name. The idea that no matter what, family is family. Personally, I find bonds forged through friendship, by choice and experience alone, is infinitely more intimate and important than something as mundane as blood. Giving BJs to your elders to be considered a man. Stabbing a boy's penis and bleeding it into a fire. Having sex with donkeys to make your penis bigger and to avoid premarital sex, cause that would be a sin. Genital mutilation of girls and boys. Breast ironing. Neck rings. Not a current practice, to the best of my belief, but human sacrifices to the gods, including sometimes children. I really hope their evidence for the efficacy of this was overwhelming, given the slaughter, sometimes of their own people, as opposed to slaves captured people. Mutilating children, usually girls, for aesthetic or purity reasons, especially in ways that leave them disabled and in pain for the rest of their lives. Genital mutilation and foot binding in particular. At least male circumcision doesn't leave them disabled and in a lifetime of pain. Raping your enemy country's women and children as a display. I cannot fathom living through the rape of Nanking. Being a soldier told to rape an infant. How could you do that even if it's for honor or your country? I can't imagine losing my humanity enough to rape a baby. Like this girl. Her dad was an IQ and had heart attack, and this was second time. We all talked to her about taking health insurance. Her reply was, no, I won't have health insurance cuz in my religion having health insurance is prohibited. WTF. And the list continues. You can't use condom or any pills. It's a shame to do so while having sex with wife. If a woman's in your life doesn't respect or is loyal to you, you have rights to kill her. And no, they're no vice versa. Cause men can have multiple wives. SMH. I don't think a human need day-to-day decision made by some unknown. And blindly following them is so sad. It's a common belief among Jehovah's Witnesses that they shouldn't accept blood transfusions under most circumstances, and they can be ostracized by their community if they do. The medical providers are trained to accept this and respect religious differences, but I honestly think it's spools and very frustrating that people die over this. Incapacitating people as a display of wealth. Both Chinese foot binding and the practice of growing insanely long fingernails and toenails are meant to display your ability to not work with your hands or feet because you're so wealthy. Of course it's gross on a physical level, but it's also gross on a social level. So two come to mind from our current day and age. 1. The treatment of Uyghurs in China. As a modern society who has seen and witnessed multiple ethnic cleansings over the years, you would think more would be done to stop this, but because China is a major trading partner for almost every country, no one wants to upset the big fish for fear of retribution. 2. The practice in some countries where a person who has been raped is then basically forced to marry their rapists. This is appalling and allows a rapist to go free and to continue to traumatize their victim for the rest of their lives. For mainstream US culture, that is, involving people that aren't on the complete fringes of US society, though this practice is mostly popular in evangelical Christian communities. Purity balls are pretty fricked up. Purity rings aren't unheard of. A teenager, usually a teenage girl, having a ring that symbolizes a pledge to remain pure and not have premarital sex. However, purity balls take it next level, where there's a ceremony in which fathers give their daughters these rings, and the daughters promise their fathers to abstain from premarital sex. Some of them look weirdly like prom. Everyone is dressed up and each couple stands in front of the audience to exchange their rings. But then there are some purity balls that are straight up marriage ceremonies, dads walking down the aisle with their daughters, daughter wearing a white dress, exchanging rings and purity vows in front of a pastor. Super fricked up symbolism for the next man to walk you down the aisle will be your husband. They even will have a dad-daughter couple's first dance like at wedding receptions. Besides that, the practice of heck houses around Halloween are fricked too. They're religious themed haunted houses on steroids, with the purpose being to terrify children into avoiding sins. They usually feature graphic representation of what heck is like, sometimes including the damned soul actor being beaten with chains by the devil, messed up scares about homosexuality, gory scenes about abortion, etc. Then the heck house naturally concludes with a scene about heaven and being saved, and the patrons are encouraged to repent for their sins. The Urarana people, obviously without having a working model of microorganisms, or even cells for that matter, integrated bacteria into some of their most sacred rituals fairly frequently. To attain the status of elevated Mr. Gorg, the young applicants had to spend 2 days in a tomb-like container without food and water. A sugary concoction which promotes bacterial growth was applied to the surface of their eyeballs, and they subsequently were instructed to lay still for the duration of the ordeal. Some prospective shamans died. Many partially lost their sight. The idea was that a mesh of microorganisms, of course they wouldn't have called it that, should invade the profane architecture of the human eye and replace regular vision with the more universal perspective of nature herself. We have no detailed record of how well this process worked, but from what I've seen in the lab, a fairly thick and healthy layer of fungi or prokaryotes could indeed form during that time, under the right conditions. Must have looked pretty gruesome. Europeans using ground up mummies for paint, then going on to mock other cultures for barbarism, cannibalism etc., while they literally grind up people to paint with. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.